Hello and welcome back to Empyrion Galactic Survival. My name is Spanj and welcome to Alpha 6.0 on the Wolves multiplayer server. Now this is a little bit different from your alpha game, and little is an understatement. Okay, let me take you through it. When you first start your game, you choose your faction and you'll end up in a place like this. And I'll explain the factions later. But this is a starter base. Okay, now like the vanilla game, you will end up in a starter base, which is a bit of a ruin. In the vanilla game, you're catapulted towards a planet in your escape pod. In the Wolves multiplayer server, you just start here. And once you start here, remember to pick up your stuff. Okay, that should include the basics like a drill, a chainsaw, some food, and a survival constructor. Each homeworld is oxygenated, so you can breathe the atmosphere. Each starter base is different. This one is the pirate starter base, and is designed to look like the Liberator crashed very badly indeed, and you and your fellow companions were the only survivors. Once you start venturing outside of the starter base, you'll need to start collecting resources. And one of the things you'll notice fairly immediately is the distinct lack of resources. In terms of deposits, at least anyway. The only deposits that are on the starter planet are iron deposits. And you can't mine them until you've established a mining facility. So what you do is you mine these rocks. And they will give you, some resources. Some basics. You use these with your starting survival constructor to build your motorbike, and then with your motorbike you can get around a little bit easier. Once you're on the motorbike, you're still vulnerable to attack, so watch out for creatures. They're everywhere and they're pretty nasty. Obviously ammunition is scarce because there's no magnesium, so if you do get into trouble and you're one-on-one, your best bet is probably the chainsaw. See, reloading it first is recommended. Oh, they changed the backpack icon. You're gonna die a lot, so get used to climbing on rocks to try and save yourself from the creatures below. Use your drone to get your backpack back. Use the starter base to store goods as you find them in the world, as you mine them. Use it as your own base. Build a constructor and other things here, and get started on building a hover vessel or a small vessel. But you can't mine the deposits until you've built a mining facility, i.e., your own base over a deposit. So, in my opinion, your small vessel is more important to start off with. That'll get you around. It'll also enable you to take down some POIs. Now remember on the Wolves server that you can't build from the Blueprints factory, you have to build by hand. Now, for me, I've built the Nightshade so many times I could do it with my eyes closed, so I can get my favourite little fighter, no problem. But if your favourite SVs and other blueprints are a little bit more complicated, then it might be a bit of a struggle. But nonetheless, you can't use blueprints, and the only way you can get blueprinted builds is to buy them from Wally's. And we're going to check out Wally's later on. Now when you do start taking on POIs, you probably want to pick on the smaller ones first. Some of the bigger POIs are very nasty and will kill you. And when you do get inside, you want to make sure that you are armed to the teeth before you even try and enter one of these. It's a bit of a catch-22 because in order to get the best weapons, you have to raid these POIs. So try and do your best until you can get some proper firepower, and then they'll become as easy as usual. Another trip you're going to want to make once you get your SV and enough fuel to fly it to the moon is to the portal on your moon. Make sure you've got a EVA boost equipped as well, because this portal will take you into space. Just a FYI. That off. Thank you. So this portal takes you to Wally's world, Wally's shipwrights. And once you're here at Wally's shipwrights, you'll notice it's a very beautiful looking temple. And very nice indeed. You can use these portals to get back, but the whole point coming to Wally's is to get your starter capital vessel. Why do you get a starter capital vessel, I hear you say? Well, because the resources on your homeworld are so sparse and so thin, it would take you years to scrap together enough resources to build your own capital vessel. Plus, the whole point of this server is to trade with other factions. And if you watched my showcase video on the starter vessel the other week, you'll know the sort of ships that you can get. A slight change to Wally's ship is not a starter vessel anymore, but is purchasable. And also the one that Dreamweaver built has changed slightly as well. I can't really see that because we're in shade of the sun. But we got the junk of the Redfin and the Raven, the ones that I built, and of course can't really see, but the one that Dream built here as well. And you can choose any of these ships to start off with. So once you've got your starter ship and full tank of fuel, you're free to roam around the galaxy. And as you can see, the galaxy map has changed slightly from the previous season on the Wall server. We're still divided up by our respective factions, except there is a fifth faction now, the Mercenaries faction, which I'm not sure where they start. In fact, I'm not really sure where any of the factions start. As a pirate, I obviously know that we start down in Shard in the bottom left corner there. But other than that, I don't know where anybody is. The other thing is there are very much fewer planets than there were before, which should bring us all tightly together and make it more likely that we're going to run into other players. So a bit more tension. And the resources are still as scarce and scattered out as they were before as well, which means that you need to explore pretty much the entire galaxy, apart from maybe the starter worlds, because they're all the same. But you need to explore the entire galaxy for all different resources. Now, one thing that is the same is that there are some asteroid fields in the middle of the map, and these do contain asteroids of pretty much every resource. However, they are hotly contested, as you can imagine. Everybody wants to go to these asteroid fields and get the resources before they can set up bases on other planets that contain permanent resource deposits. One thing about these planets, Traxxas, Juno, Jupiter, presumably, haven't been there, and Titan, is that they are twice the size of normal planets, and twice as inhospitable. These planets rain meteors and storms for a living. They're covered in lava, the temperature is ridiculous, and if you were to step outside in here in a t-shirt, you would fry instantly. However, they are the most resource-rich planets on the game. Well, resource in a single material, at least, anyway. But if you want that material in any sizable quantity, you're going to have to build a mining facility here, claim mining rights, and get digging. And then you can use that material to trade with the other factions. So the idea with this server, as with previous one, is that trade is key. Now, obviously, each faction can only own probably 1 or 2 resources at maximum before another faction gets their hands on another one. But as you know, everybody needs every resource in order to make any headway in this game. So you're going to have to trade with the other factions that have the resource you want. And that's where the economy comes in. One of the planets, or more, I'm not quite sure, have gold deposits on them, and gold is used to trade. And obviously if a faction takes control of all the gold deposits and nobody else does, well, the other factions are still going to have control of the other resources. So the faction with the gold is going to use that gold to buy the resources of all the other factions. And in turn, those factions will get gold and can use that to buy resources of the other factions. Gold can also be used to buy ships from Wally, so blueprints. As time goes on and trades become more, the norm, gold will start flowing around and become more accessible. However, just because a faction has control of the planet with the gold on it, doesn't mean another faction can't come along and try and take it from them. So, this is where the subterfuge comes in. If you have the firepower, the means, and the intel as well, which is very important, you can try and invading the planet that is controlled by the other faction and take the resources off them. Bearing in mind that those resources are probably going to be very heavily defended. But like I said, if you think you've got the firepower, go for it. This brings me on to the factions' roles. So, a bit like as before, you had the pirates, the nomads, the freelancers, and the military police, which are like the totalitarian dictators of the galaxy. In fact, they are the totalitarian dictators of the galaxy. And of course the pirates. Now there's a fifth faction, the mercenaries, which are joining, which are, well, I'm not really sure what their role is, other than the fact that their economy is based on people paying them to do stuff, if you don't want to do it yourself. But anyway, let's start with the nomads. So the nomads haven't changed. They're the same as before. If you don't know, nomads are basically baseless wanderers of the galaxy. So they're allowed to have bases in the forms of mining depots, but that's about as far as it goes. They're not allowed to have any other bases anywhere. They have to live on their ships, basically moving from mining deposit to pick up resources and then ultimately trade with other factions. They'll build bigger and better ships, city ships if you like. And ultimately they'll wander around the galaxy waiting to get punked by a pirate. You've got the freelancers. They're like the civilians of the world. So they just basically want to build and do their own thing. And that's fine. They're not really that interested in PvP content. Great. So they're going to still need all the resources in order to build their bigger and better ships and cities and space stations and, try and simulate some kind of free world. Whatever. But again, they're going to be wandering between the mining deposit and mining deposit to get all the resource together. They're also going to be looking to trade with the likes of nomads, the wolves police, in order to get the resources they need. And in doing that, they're opening themselves up to piracy. Then you've got the military police, which again is the same as before. They will respond to any distress call that is received to them from freelancers or nomads, or themselves, of course. They have to drop everything and then go and help. If that means that they need to chuck their forces into a clear trap or be outgunned by superior pirate numbers, then so be it. They still have to respond. And then you've got the mercenaries. And the mercenaries are a new faction for this season. So, as the name suggests, they're essentially contract killers, guns for hire. And they'll exist pretty much the same as the Wolves military police. Of course, they don't need to respond to distress calls unless they get paid to. Anybody can hire the mercenaries apart from the pirates, who are sworn enemies of the mercenaries, because essentially the mercs are, I suppose, like a split-off faction from the pirates. But anyway, mercenaries can be hired by the other faction to do anything. Attack another faction, steal resources, escort ships, run interference, hell, even run errands if they wanted to. So that'll be interesting to see how the mercenaries really affect this new world. But that's the factions. And to be honest, that's the server. I don't really know what's going to happen from now on. We're going to find out, basically. This is a new galaxy, a new faction is joining, new rules, such as the blueprint rule, and a whole new take on the economy. It's going to be interesting to see how people deal with these Jupiter-sized planets, with all the having to set up a mining depot first, and then have mining rights. Obviously, you're going to have to make some kind of robust base on these planets in order to just survive getting out of your ship. Also, the asteroid fields I can see being hotbeds of skirmishes. I don't think there's going to be full-fledged battles in the asteroid fields, but I think there will be little skirmishes between factions wanting to, you know, take the resources. As usual, you've got Wally's sector, the shipwrights, and you've got the Gladiator Wars sector as well, which is usually off limits unless we're doing an event on the server where all players take part. These green sectors here are other asteroid fields, but they seem to be no more resources in them than what's on the starter planet, i.e. just iron deposits. But they're a good place to go to farm drones and freighters and AI ships like that. Other than that, I think that's everything. From now on, my content on Empyrion is probably going to be builds and some multiplayer raiding and things like that. It's difficult to bring you content on everything on this server because it is competitive PvP play, and if I was to show you how I built a mining facility, for example, and how I built the base, then that would give intel to the other factions about where I stashed all the important stuff. So unfortunately I don't think I can bring you things like that. However, when us pirates are going on a raid, attacking another faction, you can be sure I'll bring you that. Anyway, I hope this brings you some insight into the Wolves multiplayer server and how it works, and heads up on what sort of content you can expect from us and the other chaps on the Wolves server as well that do YouTube channels. I'll link all their channels below because there's some really good stuff on there. Anyway, as always guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care. Bye bye.